All right, this next topic is about color. And color can be an extremely complicated topic, but it's important to understand some of the basics. And if you're getting into certain areas, color can be extremely crucial. Now you can see here I've borrowed this from somebody else. This is not my PowerPoint, but I liked what I found. It was publicly available on the internet, and I've used this for a number of years in this class. Color theory doesn't change. Exactly how you might use color could change, and applying it in different applications can change. But it's important when you are setting up documents on a computer that you understand how to get the colors you want. Sometimes you just need to get close to something you like, and other times you have to be very precise and define the color specifically. And in other cases, you have to make sure that the color is not only defined properly, but it is calibrated to be accurate. And there are two major categories that we deal with: color for the eyes coming off the computer. What is the computer screen doing? And then color on the printed page. Printing is very different than the computer screen. And if you're a company and you've got a company logo, it's important to have the same color all the time. If your job is printing, you're printing books, especially art books or catalogs for fabric manufacturers, paint manufacturers, and I've actually done that. I worked at a print shop years ago, and I was the art guy who set up the pre-press work, and I worked with the printer doing catalogs and books and other things for our clients. And so I needed to learn a lot about color. I was also a photographer, a professional photographer, before I went back to school and decided I wanted to get into science and agriculture. And so in photography, I had lots to learn about color. I was in charge of the darkroom and in charge of printing in the darkroom. And so my printing press experience at the print shop and my darkroom experience gave me a lot of color theory that I needed to use professionally for a number of years. And I got to be pretty familiar with it, pretty good at it. And then later, when I was out of the print shop business, out of the photography business mostly, I started having all kinds of other applications of color in computers, things like learning how to use Photoshop. I worked for a nonprofit for a while as a volunteer. It wasn't my job. It was just something I did on the side, and helped them put together their newsletter and did some other work for them. And so I needed, again, to dust off my color theory to understand how to make sure that their printed materials and their electronically supplied materials reflected accurately colors that needed to be important. Like Hartnell, we have our Hartnell logo, and I'm sure you can picture the Hartnell colors. We have this golden color plus the burgundy, whatever you would call that, the burgundy color. And somewhere on my computer right in front of me here, I've got the actual codes that define Hartnell's colors. So first, reflection color. Light rays reflected from any surface or object create color. It's the interaction of white light coming from an artificial light bulb or other artificial light source, or the sun. It has all of the different colors, or many of them, and when that light reflects off of a surface, it interacts with that surface and the pigments on that surface, and it reflects some of that light, it absorbs some of that light, and we perceive that as color. So there are pigments that are absorbing almost all of the light in my black portion of my shirt, but they're reflecting, they're not absorbing the colors that are perceived as orange on the shoulders and the logo. So again, reflected color. And that's really important in printing. But in transmitted or projected color, we use RGB. These are additive primary colors, red, green, and blue. And if you were to put a magnifying glass up to your computer screen, you would see that it's actually a bunch of dots. It's actually red, green, and blue dots. Look at a white portion of the screen. There is no white. When you get R, G, and B, red, green, and blue, excuse me while I rearrange here. When you have red, green, and blue dots and they're all on at the same brightness, saturating your eye says, oh, that's white. And you're looking here at this white screen and it's like, what? That's a white screen? I don't see any white or any red, green, and blue. And you look really close and my magnifying glass is not enough to really see all of it, but I can see some dots. I need a much better magnifying glass than this one to really see what's going on. Computers have very, very tiny dots. And there are different ways around it on colors in computer screens, but the bottom line is they are using a combination of red, green, and blue to trick your eye into seeing millions of possible color results. By adjusting the brightness of R, G, and B, you get color. We use that in TVs and computer screens. And then the CMYK is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Do you really need black? If you have cyan, magenta, and yellow, and we were to invent perfect pigments, and I combine cyan, which is kind of a bluish, maybe edging towards the green, but cyan is a sky bluish or ocean bluish kind of a color. Magenta is a kind of a fuchsia, deep purplish pink maybe. And yellow, you all know yellow. But if I had perfect cyan, magenta, and yellow, and I were to combine them, I would have black. It would be black. But there is no such thing as perfect pigments for printing. And there are limits to how deep they can absorb all of the other colors. So cyan absorbs everything except cyan, it reflects it so it looks cyan. Magenta absorbs everything except magenta, and yellow absorbs everything except yellow. You mix them together and the three of them together absorb everything and it's black. And then reality strikes. It's mud. It's this weird blackish brownish mud. Depends on the type of paint or inkjet printer or whatever you have. The three together are mud. Some of them are pretty darn close to black, sort of, maybe, but not close enough for professional printing for sure. And so in printing, we add a true black, which allows us to get a high quality print. So now, instead of sending red, green, and blue to your eyes in a computer monitor or TV, we are creating cyan, magenta, yellow, and black inks onto paper or canvas or any other printed medium, cloth. You can print on damn near anything with the right types of pigments. But on a solid surface, we're putting cyan, magenta, yellow, and black in order to get these colors reflected properly. And there are other ways to do it. If I'm painting, I don't paint with just 4 colors. I mix the colors. I pre-mix them and paint with them. And there's lots of colors you can mix when you're painting, but that's different, and I'm not going to get into that. It's still, in theory, underneath it when you're mixing colors for painting, it still is just technically mixtures of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black components in some level, some way. But again, it's more complicated than that when you get into paints. But for printing, your printer, your inkjet printer, your color laser printer, even your professional printers, newspapers, and other things, most things, they are going to deal with cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Now, if I'm printing a high-end book, I might do it a little differently. I might use more of the painting methodology and mix custom colors to get things just right. But you don't have to. You don't have to. In theory, CMYK is all you need. So here are the CMYK, and I don't know how it looks on your screen because I don't know how they're calibrated, but you can see the cyan color, that kind of a slightly greenish sky blue or ocean blue versus magenta, that hot purplish pink, yellow, and black. And we use this in our day-to-day lives. The most likely place you run across this is in color inkjet printers. Some of them have a color ink cartridge, which has these 3 in one cartridge, and then a separate cartridge for black. And some of them, all 4 of these are separate ink cartridges. And from that, with these 4, if you've ever had a decent inkjet printer these days, which isn't hard to get, they're cheap, you can have amazingly lifelike photographs showing skin tones and bright flowers and the soft hues of autumn colors and all kinds of amazing detail and color levels with just these 4 things. Assuming, and in printing, we're assuming generally our white, our pure white is the background. We're printing on white paper. And so in printing, there is a limitation with the color of the medium on which you're printing. If I'm printing on a piece of yellow paper, I'm not going to get true results. How do you make white on yellow paper? In painting, you can deal with that. You can always paint with white paint. In printing, the paper, the underlying paper, is an important component of the accuracy of colors. So if I'm going to be overlaying these, let's say I have a laser printer. A laser printer lays down the colors one at a time. And so I lay down the yellow, I lay down on top of that yellow a layer of magenta, which is this hot pinkish color. And it shows magenta here where it was white, but magenta plus yellow, we've got these oranges and reds now coming up. And then I add the magenta and I add the black to get depths. You notice that with the 3 colors, without black, the shadows are really muddy and brown and they're weak. I don't have good darks. I don't have good blacks. So to get things to pop, you really need to add black to get a true black. And now I've got this picture of colored blocks. Children's colored blocks in a stack, a little close-up photo. All of that with 4 colors. So there are terms with color. First is the hue, which is the actual color. And the next is the saturation or chroma, how intense that color is. And I can move with any color an exact wavelength of red. If I have a whole bunch of it, it's really bright, I can approach white. And if I have very little of it, I can approach black, depending on the saturation level or chroma level. There's also the shade. The shade is adding black. And the tint is adding white. Okay, now I'm not going to ask you about the details on shade and tint and chroma. I'm not too worried about that. I want you to understand RGB CMYK, red, green, blue, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Those are the important things. But when you start tweaking things, it is important to know. If you want to be digging in more advanced, you should know about chroma, shade, and tint. There's other terminology like warm colors versus cool colors. Warm colors tend to be associated with summer and fall, and the cool colors often are associated with winter. Other moods, they can be cool colors calming and relaxing, and possibly to some extent even depressing. Where warm colors can be happy, but they can also be stimulated, exciting, and maybe even causing aggressiveness. So when you're trying to create a marketing campaign, I guarantee you marketers know about this. Where is the mind of your customer? And where are you trying to move their mind? Are you trying to calm them down? Are you trying to excite them? So you can't change certain things from location to location. You come up with your logo. You want your logo to pop. You want it to be memorable. You want it to have colors that people can understand and remember easily. So your logo is your logo. But if I have that logo maybe on a billboard on a freeway, I might want to mix it in with some cool, calming colors, because everybody's stressed out. They're in traffic. They see this billboard. Your logo is whatever the colors are, but other colors that make up the rest of the layout of that billboard, maybe you want to use some cool. Maybe you want it to be a calming effect where somebody goes, oh, just relax a little bit as they look at those colors. Or maybe you want to get somebody excited. You want to get somebody energized. You want to use warmer colors. And people know this left and right, up and down. There have been plenty of studies to prove that these effects on psychology are real. People who are in rooms with warm colored walls, they, especially in a spot like emergency rooms, you don't want that. People who are already in an agitated state might get overstimulated and aggressive, whereas blue colors tend to calm people. And there's plenty of data to show it's real. So you use these kinds of tidbits of information. So here's the color wheel, very similar to the rainbow, but in a color wheel pattern. And there's all kinds of ways to represent color. But if you think of the rainbow, there's a memory aid, Roy G. Biv. Roy, the name R-O-Y, a man's first name, Roy, middle initial G, last name Biv, B-I-V as in Victor. And so we have here red, orange, yellow, Roy, G, B, V, blue and violet. Indigo is actually a color that is intermediate between blue and violet. And so just to make it work for the last name, there's no last name that you could pronounce. So indigo is also represented in the mnemonic memory aid for the rainbow, Roy G. Biv. And that's the color progression that you will see in a rainbow. If you're drawing a rainbow or coloring a rainbow, remember that. What color goes next? Roy G. Biv, with the I being kind of an intermediate color between blue and violet. The complementary colors are colors that are opposite of each other, and they contrast well with each other. They don't share any common colors, so they contrast in ways that can provide, again, a certain type of mood, or they stand out extremely well with each other. By placing brilliant orange flowers against a bright blue background, Van Gogh's painting has a lot of visual energy. You have, now look, what does he have? He has orange flowers against a blue background. Orange flowers, if we go back to the complementary colors, against a blue background. There is, there is energy in the contrast. They pop from each other. And there's a lot of warm colors. Even though there's blue in the background, the browns and yellows and even the greens tend on the yellow side. There's tons of energy and warmth in this picture, despite the contrast of the blue. Again, I don't want to get into the details of how this works in art, but these concepts are really important in marketing and developing colors for your company, developing billboards and advertising, making PDFs that are going to your clients, anything that is going to create an opportunity to communicate with your customers. Colors play an important role. Analogous colors are those that you'll find fairly close to one on the color wheel. And they're tending to be more harmonious rather than contrasting and providing a distance and an energy. They tend to calm it down. They tend to be more, more like they fit in the same area, the same mood space, if you will. So there are ways to match colors, and this is very, very important. I already told you about RGB and CMYK, and those are important concepts, but if I'm talking about colors and I'm talking to my printer and the book has to print this yellow flower just perfectly, or the catalog has to do my Indian rug fabric, it has to look exactly like the original with the exact same colors. I need a way to communicate those colors a little more accurately and effectively than just a simple RGB or CMYK. Now, they're still pretty damn good. You can get some very accurate numbers with CMYK and RGB, and you can calibrate your printer to some standards. And you can calibrate your monitor so that it is displaying the colors accurately to the user of any computer screen. But in the professional world, that might not be enough. And one of the standards in the world of color is called Pantone. And it is a color matching system that overcomes some of the limitations of communicating exact colors. Now, what you're seeing in front of you, Pantone 611 and Pantone 641, are maybe not that accurate. They're undoubtedly close, but your computer monitor is not calibrated to the Pantone system, so your computer monitor might be off a little bit. Not only that, but it's translated from a color to a PowerPoint to my computer display to Zoom video to your computer. There's been a lot of handoffs, of transitions or translations of this color. And undoubtedly, the Pantone 611 that you see in front of you ain't perfect. If a color doesn't serve a function, leave it out. That's kind of a rule. And that means when you're doing basic layout, if it's not doing something, if it's not important, why are you creating a background color, a line color? Why aren't you leaving something just black? What's the purpose? If I'm making my text a different color, why? You need a purpose. If use color should go with the rest of the page, so color should match with what you're trying to do. Are you looking for a complementary color pattern? And you want to be consistent. You don't want to be all over the map where the colors in one area don't go well with the colors in another area of the page. Screen and background colors, generally you want them to be very light or pastel type colors. Not always. You can use dark background with light text in some cases, but rarely. In certain situations, that can backfire sometimes. But the rules change with our society, our moods, our general trends, and in fashion and other perceptions. So here you can see a lighter background. Everything is very warm. There's definitely kind of an energy to this because of the intensely warm colors. It's all warm. Don't worry about what it says, but it does all match. The background is in the same general warm family of colors. Here we have some standout, the tint that's causing the user's eyes to go to some important graphical information. And so this aqua band, it's not quite cyan, but an aqua band helps draw the user's attention. Color pictures also help. There's some color pictures. There's a little graphic down here with some color. All of that can help. And so again, this is not a news class. I mean, the presentation was designed for a newsprint class. I'm teaching the basics, but you're looking at how these things might be applied. So I'm going to skip through these and not talk about any more of these examples. Spot color, and that's when you're doing one additional color besides black. That's a newsprint kind of a terminology. Or printing press kind of a terminology. I don't hear that used outside of desktop publishing computer things. Spot color is more desktop publishing or newspapers, magazines. Duotones are when you have the addition of a color with a black and white photo. Again, don't worry about those terms. Those are things that if you want to know something, if you're interested in the print world, marketing might be one of those areas. You probably should know about spot color and duotones, but I don't care for this class. But here's some spot color used to make some things pop, not only the bands, but you're getting the additional one letter, which helps really do that popping. A little bit of red for your bullets, a little bit of the same red in your map, all of it the same red. So from a printing standpoint, with a true professional printing press, it makes it simpler. With a inkjet or laser printer for a computer printer, it doesn't really matter. But you notice that all those reds are consistent, which might make good sense for standard guidelines on how to do these things. Here's a duotone example. Here they're giving the sepia effect, an old-fashioned photo effect. This kind of golden or copperish effect on old photos is called sepia toning in specific, but duotone is the more general because it doesn't have to be sepia, which is specifically this coppery appearance. Another duotone. Tinting and boxes can help make things pop. You need some spacing in order for that. Look how that works. It's like, nah, it doesn't, that's too close. But with some spacing, you're giving yourself some room. It's more comfortable to look at. And pica, that's a printing term. We would have either inches, millimeters, or pixels, most likely on the computer, but it's still just creating some space that is important when you're creating these elements. So you probably learn more about color than you want to know, but there's some really important things. It's important when we're creating visual documents that are going to be web pages, advertisements, PDF files, or we're creating billboards, marketing materials, whatever it is. Understanding color, understanding how to use color is important. And understanding with your monitor that it is on an RGB system. And if you really think color is important for some application, you need to get a program installed. It's a tiny utility that will help you calibrate your monitor for accurate color. And the same is true of your printing operations. You need to calibrate your printers so that they are accurate with color. Can you calibrate any monitor and printer? Probably not. These are professional type applications, and so it's only going to apply to professional situations.